The silence was deafening. Hundreds of eyes turned toward the grand entrance as two figures appeared in the doorway, their presence commanding attention without a single word spoken. In that moment, time seemed to freeze. The weight of history, tradition, and raw human emotion collided in a single breath. What happened next would be remembered not just as a formal appearance, but as a moment that revealed the true depth of love, duty, and vulnerability that exists behind the crown. This isn't just another royal story. This is about two people who found themselves at the center of a moment so profound that it would touch the hearts of millions around the world. A moment where protocol gave way to genuine emotion, where the mask of royalty slipped just enough to show the real people underneath. William and Kate's entrance that day wasn't planned to be emotional. It wasn't scripted for tears or designed for drama. But sometimes, the most powerful moments are the ones that catch us completely off guard. Sometimes, it's in those unguarded seconds that we see the truth of who people really are, regardless of their titles or their crowns. What you're about to discover is the story behind that moment. The journey that led two ordinary people to become extraordinary symbols of hope, love, and resilience. This is the story of how a simple entrance became a memory that would last forever. The morning sun cast long shadows across the ancient stones of St. Andrew's University as William Arthur Philip Lewis Windsor stepped out of his dormitory for what would become one of the most important walks of his life. He had no idea, of course, that this ordinary Tuesday in September 2001 would set in motion a love story that would captivate the world for decades to come. William was trying desperately to be normal. At 19, he was tall, athletic, and carried himself with the easy confidence that came from years of private education and royal training. But beneath that polished exterior was a young man grappling with questions that most teenagers never have to face. How do you find real love when you're destined to be king? How do you trust that someone loves you for who you are, not what you represent? The weight of his future pressed down on him every day. He knew that every friendship, every relationship, every casual conversation would be scrutinized and analyzed. The media followed his every move, looking for scandal or romance, or any hint of the man he was becoming. Privacy was a luxury he couldn't afford, authenticity a risk he wasn't sure he could take. That's why St. Andrews felt like a sanctuary. The ancient Scottish university had agreed to give him space, to treat him like any other student. For the first time in his life, William could walk to class without a security detail shadowing his every step. He could eat in the dining hall without photographers hiding in the bushes. He could, for brief moments, forget that he was second in line to the throne. But even in this haven, William felt the isolation that came with his birthright. Making real friends was complicated when people either treated you like royalty or pretended too hard to treat you normally. Dating was even more complex. How do you explain to someone that a relationship with you means a lifetime in the public eye? How do you know if someone's feelings are genuine when they know you'll inherit one of the world's oldest monarchies? 300 miles away in the village of Chapel Row, Catherine Elizabeth Middleton was facing her own uncertainties, though they were of a very different nature. Kate, as everyone called her, came from a close-knit family that had worked hard to build their party planning business from nothing into something successful. Her parents, Michael and Carol, had instilled in her the values of hard work, integrity, and staying grounded no matter how high you climbed. Kate was excited about university, but she was also nervous. St. Andrews was prestigious and expensive, filled with students from backgrounds very different from her own. She worried about fitting in, about making friends, about proving herself in an environment where many of her classmates had never questioned whether they belonged. She had always been driven and ambitious, but in a quiet way. Kate wasn't the type to demand attention or push herself forward. Instead, she observed, listened, and found her place through genuine kindness and reliability. Her friends from school described her as someone you could count on, someone who remembered your birthday, and checked on you when you were stressed about exams. The decision to study history of art at St. Andrews hadn't been made lightly. Kate was genuinely passionate about art and culture, but she also knew that this degree would open doors to museum work, galleries, or auction houses. She had plans and dreams that extended far beyond university, though she couldn't have imagined how dramatically those plans would change. When William first noticed Kate, it wasn't during a dramatic moment or a formal introduction. It was in the most ordinary of circumstances, sitting in a lecture hall listening to a professor discuss Renaissance painting techniques. She was sitting 3 rows ahead of him, taking careful notes, occasionally tucking a strand of dark hair behind her ear as she concentrated. There was something about her stillness that caught his attention. In a room full of students who seemed eager to impress or be noticed, Kate was simply present. She wasn't performing or posing. She was just herself, completely absorbed in learning about something that clearly fascinated her. William found himself looking forward to that Tuesday morning lecture, not because of his growing appreciation for art history, but because he wanted to see her again. He began to notice small things about her. The way she smiled when the professor made a particularly clever observation. How she never seemed frustrated when other students asked obvious questions. The careful way she organized her notes, creating little sketches in the margins to help her remember key concepts. For weeks, they existed in the same space without speaking. William would arrive early to make sure he had a good view of her, though he told himself it was just because he wanted to focus better on the lectures. Kate, meanwhile, was completely unaware that Prince William was even in her class. She had heard he was attending St. Andrews, but the lecture hall was large, and she was focused on her studies. The first time they made eye contact was completely accidental. Kate had dropped her pen, and, as she bent to retrieve it, she glanced back and found herself looking directly at William. For a moment, they just stared at each other. Then, Kate smiled, a quick, genuine expression of friendliness before turning back to face the front. That smile changed everything for William. It wasn't a smile of recognition or calculation. It wasn't the careful, practiced expression he was used to receiving from people who knew who he was. It was just a normal, human moment of connection between two students sharing a class. After that lecture, William made a decision that would alter the course of both their lives. Instead of leaving through his usual exit, where his security team waited discreetly, he took a different route. He timed his departure to coincide with Kate's, and, as they walked toward the door, he found himself beside her. That was fascinating about the use of light in Caravaggio's work, he said, his heart pounding as he spoke the first words he had ever said to her. Kate looked up at him, slightly surprised to be addressed by someone she didn't know. It really was, she agreed. I had no idea how much technique went into making those religious scenes feel so dramatic and real. They walked together toward the university quad, talking about the lecture, about their other classes, about their impressions of St. Andrews. William was amazed by how natural the conversation felt. Kate wasn't trying to impress him or fish for personal information. She was just talking to him like he was any other student, any other young man she might have met in class. When they reached the point where their paths diverged, William felt a sudden panic. He didn't want this conversation to end. He didn't want to return to his careful, guarded existence. For 20 minutes, he had felt completely normal, completely himself. Would you like to get coffee sometime? He asked, the words tumbling out before he could second-guess himself. Kate considered this for a moment. He seemed nice enough, and she was always open to making new friends. Sure, she said. There's a good cafe near the library. Tomorrow, after the morning lecture? William nodded, probably too enthusiastically, and they parted ways. As Kate walked toward her dormitory, she had no idea that she had just agreed to coffee with the future King of England. And William, walking in the opposite direction, felt lighter than he had in months. That night, William lay awake thinking about their conversation. For the first time since arriving at university, he had connected with someone who saw him as just William, not as Prince William. Kate had looked at him with curiosity and friendliness, not with the mixture of awe and calculation he was used to seeing in people's eyes. He knew he should tell her who he was before their coffee date. It wasn't fair to let her walk into a relationship without knowing what she was getting into. But the temptation to have just one more normal interaction, one more conversation where he was judged solely on his own merits, was too strong to resist. Kate, for her part, spent the evening wondering about the friendly student from her art history class. There had been something familiar about him, but she couldn't place it. He spoke with the kind of confidence that suggested a privileged background, but then, again, many students at St. Andrews came from wealthy families. What had impressed her was his genuine interest in the subject matter and his easy way of talking about ideas. The next morning, both William and Kate arrived at the cafe early, though neither would admit to being eager. When Kate walked in and saw William already seated at a corner table, she felt a small flutter of nervousness. In the bright light of the cafe, she could see him more clearly than she had in the darkened lecture hall. "You're Prince William," she said quietly as she sat down across from him. William's heart sank. The magic of anonymity was over before it had really begun. "Yes," he said, waiting for her to change, to become different now that she knew. But Kate surprised him. She nodded thoughtfully, as if processing this information, and then said, "That must be quite a lot of pressure." It wasn't the response he had expected. Not excitement, not immediate deference, not the sudden change in behavior he was used to. Just a simple acknowledgement of what his life must be like. "It is," he admitted, and found himself telling her things he had never said to anyone outside his family. About the loneliness of always being watched. About the difficulty of knowing whether people liked him for himself. About his fears regarding the future and the weight of expectations that followed him everywhere. Kate listened without judgment, asking thoughtful questions and offering perspectives he had never considered. She didn't minimize his struggles, but she didn't treat them as insurmountable either. Instead, she talked about her own challenges with feeling like she belonged, about the pressure to succeed and make her parents proud, about the difficulty of staying true to yourself when you're trying to figure out who you are. As their coffee grew cold, William realized that he had found something he hadn't dared to hope for. Kate saw him completely, both the prince and the person, and she wasn't intimidated by either. She was interested in his thoughts and dreams, but she also expected him to be interested in hers. She treated him as an equal, which was something William had never experienced before. When they finally left the cafe, 3 hours after they had planned to meet for a quick coffee, both William and Kate knew that something significant had begun. They didn't call it love yet, didn't acknowledge the depth of connection they had discovered. But they both felt the shift, the sense that their lives had just taken an unexpected and wonderful turn. That afternoon, Kate called her mother. "I think I've made a friend," she said, and Carol Middleton could hear the smile in her daughter's voice. She had no idea that this friendship would eventually make her daughter one of the most famous women in the world. William, walking back to his dormitory, felt something he hadn't experienced since childhood, the pure joy of being understood and accepted for exactly who he was. He had found someone who could see past his title to the person underneath, someone who could become a true companion on the complicated journey of his life. Neither of them could have predicted where this connection would lead. They couldn't have imagined the challenges they would face, the scrutiny they would endure, or the love story they would create together. All they knew was that they had found something real and precious in each other, something worth protecting and nurturing as it grew. The foundation of their future was being laid in these simple, honest conversations between two university students who were just beginning to understand the profound impact they would have on each other's lives. Spring arrived in St. Andrews with an explosion of color that seemed to mirror the transformation happening in William and Kate's relationship. What had begun as casual coffee meetings after lectures had evolved into long walks along the coastline, studying together in the library, and quiet dinners at small restaurants where they could talk without interruption. William found himself experiencing university life in a way he had never imagined possible. For the first time, he had someone who wanted to spend time with him simply because they enjoyed his company. Kate never asked him about royal protocols or state occasions. She didn't want to know what it was like to live in a palace or meet world leaders. Instead, she wanted to know what he thought about their philosophy reading, whether he preferred studying in the morning or evening, and what made him laugh. Kate, meanwhile, was discovering that the person behind the royal title was funny, thoughtful, and surprisingly uncertain about many things. William worried about his grades, complained about professors who assigned too much reading, and had strong opinions about which campus food was actually edible. He was competitive when they played sports together, but gracious when he lost. He remembered things she had told him weeks earlier and asked follow-up questions that showed he had been genuinely listening. The media had not yet discovered their relationship, which felt like a miracle to both of them. They could walk through the town together, sit on benches overlooking the North Sea, and share inside jokes without photographers capturing every moment. This privacy allowed their connection to develop naturally, without the pressure of public scrutiny or speculation about their future. Their friends began to notice the change in both of them. William seemed more relaxed, more present in conversations and activities. He laughed more easily and worried less about how others perceived him. Kate glowed with a quiet happiness that was impossible to miss. She talked about William constantly, though she was careful not to use his title, referring to him simply as someone special she had met in class. The first time William invited Kate to spend a weekend at a friend's country house, she almost said no. The invitation felt like a step into his world, a world where she wasn't sure she belonged. But William had explained that it would be a casual gathering, just a few university friends getting away from campus for a couple of days. Kate spent hours trying to decide what to pack. She wanted to fit in, but she didn't want to pretend to be someone she wasn't. In the end, she chose simple, classic pieces that felt authentically her. When William picked her up that Friday afternoon, his smile told her she had made the right choices. The weekend was a revelation for both of them. William's friends welcomed Kate warmly, and she found herself fitting into their conversations and activities with surprising ease. She held her own in debates about politics and art. She was game for long hikes through the countryside, and she proved to be unexpectedly skilled at card games. More importantly, William saw how Kate handled herself in a social situation that could have been intimidating. She was confident without being pushy, interested in others without being invasive, and funny without trying too hard. She made everyone around her feel more comfortable, including William himself. That weekend, they had their first real conversation about the future. Not their future together, which still felt too new and uncertain to discuss directly, but their individual futures and how they imagined their lives unfolding after university. William talked about his sense of duty and his awareness that his life would never be entirely his own. He spoke about wanting to make a difference, to use his position to help people, but also about his fears regarding living up to expectations and the legacy of his mother. Kate listened carefully, asking thoughtful questions and offering perspectives that helped him see his situation from new angles. Kate shared her own dreams and uncertainties. She talked about her interest in working with children, possibly in education or child development. She mentioned her love of photography and her thoughts about perhaps combining that interest with travel or documentary work. She was honest about her financial concerns and her desire to build a career that would make her parents proud while also fulfilling her personally. What struck them both was how well their values aligned. They both believed in hard work, in treating others with respect regardless of their background, and in the importance of family. They both wanted to contribute something meaningful to the world, though they imagined doing so in very different ways. As their relationship deepened, they began to navigate the small challenges that came with dating someone whose life was fundamentally different from your own. Kate had to learn to live with the reality that William sometimes had royal obligations that took him away from university without warning. William had to understand that Kate's family expected to meet him at some point, and that continuing to keep their relationship completely separate from her other relationships wasn't sustainable. The first time Kate brought William home to meet her parents was both terrifying and wonderful. Michael and Carol Middleton had raised their daughter to be confident and independent, but nothing had prepared them for the possibility that she might fall in love with the future King of England. William was nervous in a way that surprised him. He had met world leaders, heads of state, and dignitaries from dozens of countries, but the prospect of having dinner with Kate's family felt more important and more intimidating than any of those formal occasions. The Middleton home was warm and welcoming in a way that William found both foreign and deeply appealing. Family photos covered the mantelpiece. Comfortable furniture invited people to sit and stay a while, and the kitchen smelled like home cooking rather than formal cuisine. It was the kind of place where people gathered around the table after dinner to continue conversations, where laughter was common and everyone was expected to help with the dishes. Carol and Michael had agreed beforehand that they would treat William as they would any young man their daughter brought home. They asked about his studies, his interests, and his plans after university. They shared stories about Kate's childhood and included him in family jokes and traditions. They were warm and welcoming without being overly deferential. William found himself relaxing in ways he hadn't expected. The Middleton family dynamic was something he had observed from the outside, but never experienced personally. There was an easiness to their interactions, a casual affection, and teasing that spoke of deep bonds and shared history. He began to understand where Kate's groundedness came from, how she had developed her ability to make others feel comfortable and valued. That evening, as Kate walked William to his car, he took her hands and told her how much her family meant to him. Not because they had treated him well, though they had, but because they had given him a glimpse of what a truly happy family looked like. They had shown him the kind of warmth and connection he wanted to build in his own life. Kate felt her heart swell with love for this man who could command rooms full of dignitaries, but was genuinely moved by her parents' kindness. She saw how much it meant to him to be welcomed without reservation, to be included in the kind of ordinary family moments he had rarely experienced. As winter approached and their second year at university began, William and Kate faced their first real test as a couple. The media had finally discovered their relationship, Photographers began appearing wherever they went together. The privacy that had allowed their love to grow was suddenly, dramatically gone. Kate found herself thrust into a world she had never imagined. Paparazzi followed her to classes, to the grocery store, to visits with friends. Her every outfit was analyzed, her expressions scrutinized, her background investigated. The quiet, normal life she had built at university was replaced by constant awareness of being watched and judged. William was furious about the invasion of Kate's privacy, but he also knew this was only the beginning. If their relationship continued to develop, this level of scrutiny would become her permanent reality. The weight of that knowledge pressed down on him. Was it fair to ask someone to give up their privacy forever? Was love enough to compensate for a lifetime of public attention? Kate struggled with the sudden loss of anonymity, but she also surprised herself with her resilience. She developed strategies for dealing with photographers, learned to dress in ways that wouldn't provide embarrassing photos, and found ways to continue her studies despite the distractions. More importantly, she began to understand the reality of what a future with William would involve. They had long conversations about whether they could build a sustainable relationship under these circumstances. William offered to step back, to give Kate space to decide whether this life was something she wanted. Kate considered the option seriously, weighing her love for William against the loss of privacy and normalcy that came with being in his life. In the end, what convinced Kate to stay was not just her feelings for William, though those were deep and growing stronger every day. It was her recognition that he needed someone who could understand and support him as he prepared for his future role. She saw the loneliness in his life, the weight of expectations he carried, and the genuine good he wanted to do in the world. Kate made a conscious decision to learn everything she could about royal life and royal expectations. She studied protocol, learned about the history and structure of the monarchy, and began to understand the complex balance between personal desires and public duty that would define their life together. William, seeing Kate's commitment to understanding his world, fell even more deeply in love with her. Her willingness to consider giving up so much for their relationship humbled him and convinced him that she was someone he could trust with his heart and his future. As their second year at university drew to a close, both William and Kate knew they had found something extraordinary in each other. They had built a relationship based on genuine love and understanding, tested by real challenges and strengthened by shared values. They had learned to navigate the unique pressures of their situation while maintaining the authenticity that had drawn them together in the first place. Their love story was no longer just about two university students who had met in a lecture hall. It had become something larger, a partnership that could potentially shape not just their own futures, but the future of the institution William would someday lead. The foundation they had built was strong enough to support whatever came next, and both of them were ready to find out what that might be. The quiet moments they had shared, the conversations that had revealed their hearts to each other, and the challenges they had faced together had created something beautiful and enduring. They had discovered that love could survive in even the most extraordinary circumstances when it was built on honesty, respect, and shared commitment to something greater than themselves. Graduation from St. Andrews in 2005 marked the end of an era for William and Kate, though neither of them could have predicted the challenges that lay ahead. Their university years had been a protected bubble where their love could grow naturally, away from the full intensity of royal life. Now, as they stepped into the real world, they would face pressures that would test their relationship in ways they had never imagined. William's post-university life was largely predetermined. He would complete his military training at the Royal Military Academy Sandhurst, followed by service in the armed forces. This wasn't just a career choice for him. It was a family tradition and an expected part of his preparation for kingship. Every male member of the royal family had served in the military, and William was determined to honor that legacy while also proving himself on his own merits. Kate's future was far less certain. She had graduated with a good degree in art history, but her career options were complicated by her relationship with William. Any job she took would inevitably be seen through the lens of her royal connection. Employers would either want to hire her for the publicity she might bring, or they might avoid hiring her to prevent unwanted media attention. The transition from university life to the real world created the first significant strain on their relationship. William's schedule became increasingly demanding and unpredictable. His military training required long periods of absence from London, and when he was available, his time was often consumed by royal duties and family obligations. Kate found herself in an uncomfortable limbo. She was too well known to live a completely normal life, but she wasn't officially part of the royal family either. The media followed her constantly, analyzing her every purchase, every social outing, every career move. She was criticized for working part-time for her family's business, accused of not being ambitious enough, and simultaneously criticized when she pursued other opportunities as being opportunistic. The pressure of constant scrutiny began to take its toll on Kate. She had always been a private person, someone who preferred to work quietly toward her goals rather than seek attention. Now, everything she did was news. Her fashion choices were dissected in magazines, her friendships were analyzed for their social significance, and her family's business dealings were investigated by reporters looking for scandal. More challenging than the media attention was the uncertainty about her future. William was clearly committed to their relationship, but he was also young and focused on establishing himself in his military career. There was no official engagement, no clear timeline for their future together, and no public acknowledgement of the seriousness of their relationship. Kate's friends and family began to worry about the toll this situation was taking on her. She was putting her own life on hold, waiting for a future that might never come, while dealing with pressures that would have broken many people. Her mother, Carol, watched her daughter struggle with the impossible balance of maintaining her independence while being inextricably linked to someone whose life was not his own to control. The speculation about their relationship became intense and sometimes cruel. Every time they were seen together, the media declared an engagement was imminent. Every time they weren't seen together, rumors flew about breakups and other relationships. The constant pressure to perform their private life in public became exhausting for both of them. William struggled with his own internal conflicts during this period. He loved Kate deeply, but he was also aware of the sacrifices she was making for their relationship. He saw how the media attention affected her, how it limited her options, and invaded her privacy. Part of him wondered whether the kindest thing would be to let her go, to allow her to build a life free from the constraints that came with loving him. At the same time, William was discovering the realities of royal duty in ways he hadn't fully understood before. His grandmother, Queen Elizabeth II, made it clear that his choice of wife would have implications far beyond his personal happiness. The future queen would need to be someone who could handle the pressures of royal life, who could represent the monarchy with dignity, and who could adapt to a role that had no real precedent or training manual. The palace advisors were polite but clear in their assessment. Kate needed to prove herself capable of handling royal life before any official commitment could be made. This meant more scrutiny, more pressure, and more uncertainty about when or if their relationship would be allowed to progress to marriage. In 2007, after years of speculation and pressure, William and Kate made the difficult decision to take a break from their relationship. The decision was mutual, though painful for both of them. They agreed that they needed space to figure out their individual paths and to determine whether their love could survive the pressures of royal life. The breakup was devastating for Kate, though she handled it with characteristic grace and dignity. She threw herself into her work, spent time with friends and family, and tried to rebuild a sense of normalcy in her life. For the first time in years, she could go out without photographers following her every move. She could make decisions about her career without considering how they might affect her relationship with William. William, meanwhile, experienced his own period of soul-searching. Military life provided structure and purpose, but it also gave him time to think about what he really wanted from life. He dated other people, attended social events, and tried to imagine a future without Kate. But every experience seemed incomplete without her to share it with. The months apart clarified something important for both of them. They realized that their love wasn't dependent on the external pressures they faced. The challenges of royal life were real and significant, but they were obstacles to overcome rather than reasons to give up. More importantly, they discovered that they were stronger together than apart, that they could support each other through difficulties in ways that made them both more resilient. The decision to reconcile wasn't dramatic or sudden. Instead, it emerged gradually through careful conversations and honest reflection about what they wanted from their future. They began spending time together again, but with a new understanding of the challenges they would face and a commitment to supporting each other through them. Kate emerged from their time apart more confident and self-assured. She had proven to herself that she could handle the pressures of public life while maintaining her own identity and values. She had also learned to set boundaries with the media and to focus on the things that truly mattered to her rather than trying to please everyone. William returned to the relationship with a deeper appreciation for what Kate brought to his life. He had experienced what it was like to face his royal duties without her support and understanding. He had also gained clarity about his own priorities and his commitment to building a life that honored both his royal responsibilities and his personal happiness. Their reunion marked a turning point in their relationship. They were no longer the uncertain university students who had fallen in love in a lecture hall. They were adults who had made conscious, informed decisions about the life they wanted to build together. They understood the sacrifices that would be required, but they also believed that their love was worth those sacrifices. The media coverage of their reconciliation was intense, but William and Kate had learned to navigate it more skillfully. They were more strategic about their public appearances, more protective of their private time, and more unified in their approach to handling speculation about their future. William began to include Kate more formally in his life, bringing her to family gatherings and official events where appropriate. The royal family gradually began to accept that Kate was likely to become a permanent part of their lives, and they started to help her understand the protocols and expectations that would govern her future role. Kate used this time to prepare herself more systematically for royal life. She studied the history of the monarchy, learned about the various organizations and causes that the royal family supported, and began to develop her own ideas about how she might contribute to royal duties. She was determined to be ready when the time came for her to take on official responsibilities. More importantly, William and Kate learned to communicate more effectively about the unique challenges of their situation. They developed strategies for maintaining their relationship despite the demands of royal duty, the pressure of media attention, and the expectations of the public. They learned to support each other through difficult periods and to celebrate their successes together. Their love had been tested by time, distance, external pressure, and their own doubts and fears. But it had emerged stronger and more mature. They had discovered that their relationship could survive not just the honeymoon period of early romance, but the real challenges that would define their life together. By 2010, both William and Kate knew they were ready for the next step. They had built a foundation strong enough to support a lifetime partnership, and they had developed the skills and understanding necessary to navigate royal life together. The young man and woman who had met in a university lecture hall had become partners prepared to face whatever the future might bring. Their journey had taught them that love alone wasn't enough to sustain a relationship like theirs. It required commitment, communication, shared values, and the willingness to grow and adapt together. But it had also shown them that when love was combined with these other elements, it could overcome even the most extraordinary challenges. The test of time and distance had proven that what they had together was real, enduring, and worth fighting for. They were ready to move forward, together, toward a future that would exceed anything they had imagined when they first met. October 2010 brought an unexpected sense of freedom to William and Kate's relationship. William had completed his pilot training with the Royal Air Force and was stationed in Wales with the Search and Rescue Force, a posting that provided them with more privacy and normalcy than they had experienced since their university days. The remote location meant fewer paparazzi, less scrutiny, and the opportunity to live something approaching an ordinary life. For William, the search and rescue work was more than just military service. It was his chance to prove himself in a role where his actions could save lives. The intensity and importance of the work grounded him in ways that formal royal duties sometimes couldn't. When he was flying rescue missions, pulling people from dangerous situations, he felt the deep satisfaction of making a direct, immediate difference in the world. Kate had found her own sense of purpose during this period. She had begun working more seriously with charitable organizations, learning about causes that resonated with her, and beginning to understand how she might use any future platform to make a positive impact. She was particularly drawn to work involving children and families, causes that felt authentic to her own values and experiences. Living in Wales gave them the space to deepen their relationship away from the constant speculation about their future. They could have quiet dinners together, take long walks in the countryside, and simply enjoy being a couple without every moment being analyzed for signs of an impending engagement. It was during this peaceful period that William began to seriously consider proposing to Kate. The time apart in 2007 had clarified his feelings, and the years since their reconciliation had proven that their relationship could withstand external pressures while continuing to grow stronger. More importantly, He had come to understand that Kate wasn't just someone he loved. She was someone who would make him a better person and a better future king. The decision to propose wasn't taken lightly. William was acutely aware that asking Kate to marry him meant asking her to give up any chance of a normal life forever. Marriage to him would mean a lifetime of public scrutiny, rigid protocols, and the constant weight of representing not just herself, but the institution of the monarchy. He had watched his mother struggle with these pressures, had seen how the demands of royal life could overwhelm even the strongest person. The thought of subjecting Kate to similar pressures haunted him, but he had also observed Kate's strength, her grace under pressure, and her genuine understanding of what royal life would require. She had proven herself capable of handling the challenges while maintaining her authenticity and values. William spent months planning the proposal, wanting it to be perfect not just as a romantic gesture, but as a symbol of the life they would build together. He knew Kate well enough to understand that she would value thoughtfulness and personal meaning over grand gestures or expensive displays. The inspiration came to him during a particularly difficult rescue mission. As he flew through dangerous weather to reach people who were in mortal danger, he thought about the risks that were worth taking, about the things in life that mattered enough to warrant courage and commitment. He realized that his love for Kate and the future they could build together was worth any risk. William decided to propose during a vacation in Kenya, a place that held special meaning for both of them. They had visited the country together before, and both felt a deep connection to its landscape and culture. More importantly, it was a place where they could be completely private, away from any possibility of media intrusion or public pressure. The proposal itself was simple and perfect. William had been carrying his mother's engagement ring for weeks, waiting for the right moment. When that moment came, during a quiet evening at a remote lodge with the African sunset painting the sky in brilliant colors, the words came naturally. Kate's response was immediate and wholehearted. She had been waiting for this question, not with impatience or desperation, but with the quiet confidence of someone who knew her own heart. When William asked her to marry him, to share his life and his destiny, she said yes with complete certainty. The ring itself carried profound symbolism. Princess Diana's engagement ring was not just a beautiful piece of jewelry. It was a connection to William's mother and a symbol of the love and duty that had defined her life. By offering Kate this ring, William was not only proposing marriage, but also asking her to carry forward his mother's legacy in her own unique way. Kate understood the significance immediately. Wearing Diana's ring meant accepting the responsibility of honoring her memory while also creating her own path within the royal family. It was both a privilege and a tremendous responsibility, one that Kate accepted with humility and determination. The weeks between the private proposal and the public announcement were a whirlwind of planning and preparation. The engagement would need to be announced properly, with all the protocol and ceremony that such moments required. But before the world intruded, William and Kate had time to savor their private happiness and begin planning their future together. The official announcement came in November 2010, and the public response was overwhelming. After years of speculation and waiting, the British people and the world finally had confirmation that their favorite royal love story would have a happy ending. The announcement sparked celebrations across the Commonwealth and renewed interest in the monarchy from younger generations who had grown up following William and Kate's relationship. The engagement interview that followed the announcement revealed the depth and maturity of their relationship. William and Kate spoke honestly about the challenges they had faced, the strength they had found in each other, and their shared commitment to serving the British people. Kate's poise and thoughtfulness during the interview impressed even the skeptics who had questioned whether she was prepared for royal life. Planning a royal wedding proved to be an extraordinary undertaking. Every detail would be scrutinized, every decision would be seen as symbolic of something larger. The guest list alone required months of careful consideration, balancing family desires with diplomatic necessities and public expectations. Kate approached the wedding planning with characteristic thoughtfulness and organization. She wanted the ceremony to reflect both the grandeur appropriate for a royal wedding and the personal values that defined her relationship with William. Working with wedding planners and palace staff, she created a celebration that honored tradition while also feeling authentic to who they were as a couple. The choice of Westminster Abbey as the venue connected their wedding to nearly 1,000 years of royal history. But Kate insisted on personal touches that would make the day meaningful to their families and friends. She chose flowers that reflected her love of nature, music that held special significance for their relationship, and readings that spoke to their shared values and hopes for the future. The design of Kate's wedding dress became one of the most closely guarded secrets in Britain. Working with Sarah Burton at Alexander McQueen, Kate created a gown that was both timelessly elegant and thoroughly modern. The dress honored royal wedding traditions while also reflecting Kate's personal style and personality. As the wedding day approached, the excitement built not just in Britain but around the world. The ceremony would be watched by an estimated 2 billion people, making it one of the most viewed events in television history. But for William and Kate, the focus remained on the personal significance of the commitment they were making to each other. The night before the wedding, both William and Kate spent quiet time with their families, reflecting on the journey that had brought them to this moment. They had come so far from the university students who had met in an art history lecture, but the love that had brought them together remained unchanged at its core. Kate's family gathered around her as she prepared for the biggest day of her life, offering support and encouragement while also marveling at how their daughter's life had transformed. Carol and Michael Middleton felt enormous pride in the woman Kate had become, but also some apprehension about the pressure she would face as a member of the royal family. William spent his last evening as a single man thinking about his mother and wishing she could be there to see him marry the woman who had brought such joy and stability to his life. He felt her presence in the ring that Kate would soon wear permanently, and in the knowledge that she would have loved Kate's strength, kindness, and devotion to family. The morning of April 29, 2011, dawned bright and clear, as if even the weather wanted to celebrate their union. As William prepared for the ceremony, he felt a deep sense of peace and rightness about the step he was taking. After years of uncertainty and challenge, he was finally ready to begin the next chapter of his life with the woman he loved beside him. Kate awoke on her wedding day feeling a mixture of excitement and nervousness, but underneath it all was a profound sense of joy and certainty. She was ready to become William's wife, ready to take on the responsibilities that came with marrying into the royal family, and ready to begin building the life they had dreamed of together. The transformation from Catherine Middleton to Catherine, Duchess of Cambridge, would be complete in a matter of hours. But the love story that had begun in a university lecture hall nearly 10 years earlier was just reaching its most beautiful chapter. The promise they would make to each other that day would be the foundation for everything that came after. April 29, 2011, would forever be etched in history as one of those rare days when the entire world seemed to pause and witness something beautiful together. From the early morning hours, London buzzed with an energy that was both festive and reverent. Millions of people lined the streets, camped out overnight to secure the best viewing spots, while billions more around the globe prepared to watch what many were calling the wedding of the century. Westminster Abbey stood majestically against the London skyline, its ancient stones about to witness a ceremony that would bridge nearly 1,000 years of royal tradition with a thoroughly modern love story. Inside the Abbey, guests from around the world took their seats, representing not just the political and social elite, but also the personal communities that had shaped William and Kate's lives. Kate's morning began in the quiet sanctuary of her family's hotel suite. Despite the magnitude of the day ahead, she moved with characteristic calm and focus. Her mother, Carol, stayed close by, providing the steady support that had anchored Kate throughout her journey from university student to future queen. Her sister Pippa bustled around ensuring every detail was perfect, while her brother James offered gentle humor to ease any lingering nerves. The transformation from Catherine Middleton to the woman who would walk down the Abbey aisle was both dramatic and subtle, as her hair was arranged in an elegant style that would support the Cartier halo tiara, as the Alexander McQueen dress was carefully lifted over her head. As the finishing touches were applied to her makeup, Kate remained centered on the meaning of the day rather than its pageantry. Meanwhile, at Clarence's house, William prepared for the ceremony with his brother Harry by his side as best man. The brothers shared a bond forged through childhood tragedy and royal duty, and Harry's presence provided both moral support and moments of lightness that helped William stay relaxed. The red tunic of the Irish Guards that William wore connected him to his military service and to centuries of royal tradition. The first glimpse the world had of Kate on her wedding day came as she stepped into the glass coach that would carry her to Westminster Abbey. The collective intake of breath from the crowd was audible as they saw her for the first time in her wedding dress. The gown was everything people had hoped for, elegant and timeless, with intricate lace details that honored British craftsmanship while creating something entirely new. As the carriage made its way through the London streets, Kate could see the faces of people who had come from around the world to witness her wedding. Children waved flags from their parents' shoulders, elderly couples held hands as they watched history unfold, and young women looked at her with expressions of hope and inspiration. The weight of what this day represented for so many people settled on her shoulders, but rather than feeling overwhelmed, she felt honored to be part of something that brought such joy to others. Inside Westminster Abbey, the atmosphere was electric with anticipation. The guests included heads of state, royalty from across Europe, celebrities, and charity workers, but also university friends and family members who had been part of William and Kate's journey. The mix represented the unique position this couple held, bridging the ancient institution of monarchy with the modern world. When the Abbey doors opened and Kate appeared for the first time as a bride, the silence was profound. Even the seasoned royal watchers and dignitaries who had attended countless formal occasions seemed moved by the sight of this young woman beginning her transformation into a future queen. The dress flowed behind her in a perfect train, the tiara caught the light streaming through the Abbey windows, and her smile radiated pure happiness. The moment that would be remembered above all others came as Kate walked down the long Abbey aisle toward William. The cameras captured every step, every expression, but what they couldn't fully convey was the emotional intensity of that walk. Kate moved with grace and purpose, acknowledging the assembled guests, but keeping her eyes primarily focused on William waiting at the altar. For William, watching Kate walk toward him was overwhelming in the most wonderful way. This was the woman who had understood him when he was just another university student, who had supported him through his military training and royal duties, who had weathered the storms of public scrutiny and media pressure. Now she was walking toward him to promise a lifetime of partnership, and he felt the full weight of gratitude and love. The ceremony itself was a masterpiece of tradition and personal meaning. The vows they exchanged were the same words that had bound countless couples before them, but when William and Kate spoke them, they carried the weight of everything they had been through together. When William promised to love, comfort, honor, and protect Kate, everyone who knew their story understood the depth of that commitment. Kate's vows carried special significance as she promised to love and obey, words that had sparked debate in modern times, but which she had chosen to include as a recognition of the unique nature of their partnership. She wasn't just marrying William the man. She was accepting a role within an institution that would require its own form of service and sacrifice. The moment when Archbishop Rowan Williams pronounced them husband and wife was met with joy that seemed to ripple through the Abbey and out into the watching world. William and Kate were no longer a couple whose future was uncertain. They were the Duke and Duchess of Cambridge, partners in a journey that would take them to the throne. But perhaps the most emotionally resonant moment came during the signing of the register, when the cameras captured William and Kate in quiet conversation, laughing together in a way that reminded everyone watching that beneath all the pageantry and protocol, this was fundamentally a celebration of two people who had found love and were promising to build a life together. The carriage ride back to Buckingham Palace was a triumph. London had never looked more beautiful, with Union Jack flags lining every street and crowds of people celebrating as if they were personally invested in this couple's happiness. In many ways, they were. William and Kate represented hope, the possibility that love could triumph over obstacles, that tradition could evolve while maintaining its best qualities. The balcony appearance at Buckingham Palace provided the moment the world had been waiting for. When William and Kate stepped onto the balcony and shared their first kiss as husband and wife, the roar from the crowd below was deafening. That kiss represented not just their personal happiness, but the promise of a new generation of royalty that could connect with people across traditional boundaries. The wedding reception continued the theme of blending tradition with personal touches. The speeches included both formal toasts and intimate stories that revealed the real people behind the public personas. Prince Charles spoke movingly about watching his son find the kind of love and partnership that would sustain him through the challenges ahead. Michael Middleton's father of the bride's speech was filled with pride and gentle humor that had the guests laughing and crying in equal measure. The evening reception was smaller and more intimate, allowing William and Kate to celebrate with their closest friends and family. The first dance was to a song that held special meaning for them, a reminder of the private moments and shared experiences that had brought them to this point. Watching them dance together, guests could see the easy affection and deep connection that had sustained their relationship through years of uncertainty and pressure. As the celebration continued into the night, William and Kate took moments to step back and absorb the magnitude of what had happened. They had successfully navigated one of the most scrutinized courtships in history and emerged with their love not just intact but stronger than ever. More importantly, they had created a wedding that honored the traditions they would now represent while also feeling authentically their own. The wedding had been watched by an estimated 2 billion people worldwide, making it one of the most viewed events in television history. But the global audience hadn't just been watching a ceremony. They had witnessed the beginning of a new chapter for the British monarchy. William and Kate represented a generation that could bridge the gap between ancient traditions and modern values, between duty and authenticity. In the weeks and months that followed, it became clear that the wedding had achieved something remarkable. It had renewed interest in the monarchy among young people, strengthened the bonds between the UK and Commonwealth nations, and provided a moment of shared joy during challenging economic times. But most importantly for William and Kate, it had officially begun their life together as partners in both love and service. The young couple who had met in a university lecture hall had become symbols of hope and continuity for millions of people around the world. Their wedding day had been perfect not because everything had gone according to plan, but because it had authentically reflected who they were and what they represented together. As they prepared for their honeymoon and the beginning of their married life, William and Kate could look back on their wedding day with deep satisfaction. They had honored the past while embracing the future, celebrated their love while accepting their responsibilities, and created a moment that would be remembered as one of the most beautiful in royal history. The entrance they had made into Westminster Abbey as an engaged couple had been transformed by the time they left as husband and wife. They were no longer just William and Kate. They were the Duke and Duchess of Cambridge, ready to take their place in history and to begin building the legacy they would leave for future generations. Their love story, which had begun with such simple and ordinary circumstances, had become extraordinary not because of the pageantry and publicity, but because of the authentic connection they had built and maintained through every challenge. The moment that had changed everything wasn't just their wedding day. It was every moment they had chosen to commit to each other, to grow together, and to believe that their love was strong enough to support not just their personal happiness, but their service to others. The wedding was the culmination of one journey and the beginning of another. As they looked toward their future together, William and Kate carried with them not just the blessings of their families and the good wishes of millions of people around the world, but the deep confidence that comes from knowing you have found your true partner in life.